Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk number 383, recording live and direct on sonictalk.com/live. Remember, if this is the first time you've ever seen it, we put this on YouTube as well, so you should subscribe, because then you'll know when we do more stuff, because we've got lots of reviews. In fact, I published the Waldorf Strikefet string machine review today as well, so we've got a lot of stuff coming up. Anyway, I also want to say thank you very much to iZotope for sponsoring the show. We've got the results of the Ozone 6 competition from last week, and they're going to give it away yet another copy. Stay tuned for the results and the competition. But in the meantime, we're going to go into our guests. We've got a very special guest this week, and I'm going to introduce him last, because I suspect it will lead on to all sorts of interesting discussions. So we'll start in reverse geographical order, I think is perhaps the way to do it. We're going to start here with Mr. Rich Hilton, who's furthest away geographically, but very close to our hearts.
Reverse geographical order makes me want to turn around in my chair.
Really? I suppose you could. I better check my level. Hold on, just. So how are you, Rich?
Reverse. I'm good, thank you.
I'm
very good.
I'm very glad to hear that, mate.
Yeah,
so
thanks,
Rich Hilton, of course, Chic band member and Noel Rogers studio guy. So you've not been on the road so much in the last week then, perhaps, or am I fibbing?
Few weeks, yeah. We're home for about a month, and then it's a quick private show in Germany in early December, and then New Year's in Dubai.
Oh.
On a rather impressive list of R&B artists.
Wow, that sounds like, is it one of those
including the Jacksons and Shaka Khan and Kathy Sledge, and I don't know who I'm forgetting, but it's a big show.
That sounds like great fun. Nice.
That sounds like a long way to go to play New Year's.
Yeah, it does too. But I'm guessing they might take care of you in Dubai if it's got anything. If the Sultan's got anything to do with it, I'm sure.
Oh, maybe you're confusing it with the Sultan of Brunei, but yes, we're always very well taken care of, and we were very well taken care of last time we were in Dubai, so I have no worries about any of that.
Excellent. Well, I've never been myself, maybe one day, but thank you very much for joining us this week. Anyway, Rich, and next, well, no, actually, I'm going the wrong way around. Actually, I'm going to go to Mark Tinley. Mark Tinley, creative thinker,
hello,
sound artist, and perhaps looking quite Guy Fawkes today.
I am. I'm afraid I've just gone into a spin cycle, so I'll just say hello quickly and then...
Right, that's your washing machine.
It is, yeah. I could pretend it's a really interesting sample of something that I'm making, but, you know...
Yeah, when it's finished, you play it to us. Anyway, well, thank you very much for joining us, Mark. And now we're on to our last guest, who is Adamski official. You may not know he's actually related to Mark as well. I don't know if you can tell the family resemblance. Looking very good there. That's a very sort of atmospheric room you've got there. Nice light. How are you, Adam?
I'm good, thanks.
Excellent. Well, Adamski, of course, we know of your past. You've been through the whole kind of pop mill in the past and done that whole sort of international touring electronic pop music act kind of stuff. And now your new project is very different. How would you describe it in your own words?
Well, I wouldn't say it's so much a project as my life. Because all I do is make music as a pastime and as a livelihood, and I make everything in 3/4 time now. It's not really a project. It's not like, oh, I'm doing this sideline in 3/4 beats. It's like all my music is in 3/4. In fact, some of it is in 6/8, I'm told by people that actually went to college and stuff like that. But if it's waltzable, basically, that's what I'm doing.
That's
but with contemporary sound.
That's really interesting, because I mean, this whole you being on the show kind of came about because I found a topic which is on Attack magazine, which was it was called "Bored with 4/4." What other time signatures can work, and it was very and that was the sort of beginning point of the discussion. The fact that then, your stuff, which is FutureWaltz, is that the sort of name of the album or the genre? I mean, how are you describing it?
I'm calling my label FutureWaltz. I also call it 3-step. What I'm doing, because younger people don't really know what waltz is.
They're probably thinking, strictly ballroom kind of stuff, which is perhaps...
Or they don't even... if they don't watch that, they've never even heard the word. I mean, I've been working with, people in their late teens, early 20s, and they're like, what's that? So, and then I say 3-step, and that just makes sense to everybody, if you know.
Yeah, I guess so. So what was it that kind of... well, actually, let's just take a quick listen, because I think that's probably the first one, just so that we can kind of get an idea of this, because, I mean, I'm really interested in exploring the route to threes. So this is a track from... You've got an EP that's coming out in February, did you say?
No, on the 1st of December.
1st of December. Oh, right, so real soon.
In February, I've got a bigger thing coming out, which is like a wooden Viennese cake box with 10-inch vinyls in it, with loads of different collaborators. I don't know why I ended up with that concept, but well, the Viennese thing is the waltz connection. The cake box looks nicer than anything that the people that make normal marketing for music looks. And but no, yeah, 1st of December I'm releasing this EP with
yeah, I see that there's a 5-track listing. The Last Waltz, which is featuring McCalmont, which is I'm trying to remember. He did something with it was McCalmont and Butler, wasn't it? That's perhaps when we first heard of him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, before, he was in an indie band called Thieves, but he's an amazing soul singer, maybe the best British soul singer there is. So it's a cover version of a song that was made, that was famous in the year that both David and I were born, 1967, and I like numbers. That's why I've got 10-inch vinyls.
Okay. So it all has to it sort of ties together that way. Let's take a blast of the track 2. I think it was called "Detonate My Love," which is featuring Harmony. If I play a little bit of this, then you kind of get the idea of where the threes are going. Right, I'm not going to play the whole thing because I think that's something that people should perhaps look forward to on the final release. But
or even buy it.
Or yeah, well, of course.
Keep my fridge up to scratch.
keep the bills paid. I'm really interested though. You know, what drew you towards threes? Because I mean, you know, you are one of the kind of icons of dance and electronic, the 4 on the floor, the rave scene, been through all that, which is just very much. It's actually quite conservative in the restrictions that it places on the way that music is made. I mean, what took you there?
Yeah, there's very, very few electronic tracks in 3/4. I've really researched it. But traditionally, like, in pop and soul and R&B and rock and roll, there is more. But yeah, since music's become much more electronic in the last couple of decades, people just don't do that. And it wasn't like I was trying to think of something like, oh, what can I do that's different? I actually, one of my daughters was living in Venezuela because her mum's Venezuelan, and they were there for a bit, and I was there a lot. And the indigenous folk music's in 3/4. And I just kept hearing these really nice grooves within
very groovy, yeah, I'd imagine.
Latin, not like sort of pompous European grand orchestral stuff, which I like too, but it's not so sexy as the way they do it in Latin America. And then I was just, but then I just was tinkering about on my laptop during a tropical storm, non-beach day, and and just sort of trying to emulate these bass lines and stuff because the instrumentation of the indigenous music is kind of, it's always the same. It's this little ukulele thing called a quattro, and it just gets a bit irritating after, like, you know, every
3 weeks.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
And then I just started to enjoy working in that time signature so much. I started to just research its origins, and just the more I kind of found out about the formulation of that in Europe in the 18th century or before that, and how it all came around, and the waltz, and how the waltz spread around the world at the turn of the 19th century, and blah blah.
Well,
I just found it fascinating and inspiring.
What's interesting to me is the fact that, you know, we are so used to the whole 4/4 thing. I mean, and Rich, you know, from your point, you know, you work with kind of one of the icons of disco. It's very much a 4/4 thing. You might get a bit of 6/8 in there, possibly. But I mean, there isn't much of a history of deviating from that, apart from maybe the phrasing. But actually, the 3/4 thing has been very. Like Adam was saying, you know, it was a huge, big deal, you know, back at the turn of the 18th century, you know, and the whole Viennese waltz kind of thing. It was the meter that everybody used to dance to.
Well, yeah, everything you've said is true, except that Niall and I are both classically trained, and we've both done movie score work. So we've worked in all kinds of time signatures, and
a lot of
time signatures don't phase us at all. Sorry, Ad?
Sorry. Interrupt. I do notice a lot of American incidental music is in 3/4 actually, like, and I really enjoy like soundtracks more than the movies themselves oftentimes, and
well,
yeah.
No doubt dance music outside of the area of waltz popularization that you guys have already talked about has been taking place mostly in a 4/4 kind of an environment. However, in the last I'd say 20 or 30 years, as relates to that, compound meters have become a little bit more well accepted also in the marching band community, where obviously you have 100 people moving at the same time to a particular meter that may or may not be changing at any given time. But I mean, just to break it down to the very basics of rhythm, you've got 2s and you've got 3s.
That's kind of it, I guess.
And then everything that descends from that. So if you have 7, you've got a pair of 2s and a 3. If you've got 5, you've got a 2 and a 3. If you've got 4/4, you've got a pair of 2s. If you've got 6 something, you've got a pair of 3s.
Right.
If you've got 11, you've got a 5 and a 6. That's probably broken down 3, 3, 3, and 2. So there's only so many different ways to break it down, and people can be brought to dance to almost any of them, although the higher number of compound signatures tend to be a little more confusing. But when you have 5s and 7s, the beat sort of turns around with every pair of iterations anyway. So some people have been very successful in creating dance environments with prime number tempos like 5 and 7 because they, like I say, they turn around each alternate time. One good example is the band Magma from France in the 70s, which was not dance music, but still had a very strong pulse. So if we take the fences down about making this about dance music, compound meters have been around forever or for a very long time, and it's all down to 2s and 3s.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I think, Adam, I guess one of the things is you know, the club scene, you know, for all its free rave and what have you, the whole idea of it breaking out from the standards of society or whatever, are probably a fairly conservative bunch. I mean, how have they been going? How do you find that they are dealing with the 3/4 side of things?
Well, I get less bookings when I point blank refuse to go and do like golden oldies sets or just play. So I say I'm only going to play in 3/4, and it's been hard to get an agent. But I have played. I've stuck to my guns, and I've played at sort of quite a cross section of things, like very druggy raves up north and in the Midlands, and very fashiony sort of parties in Paris and Moscow, and then kind of pubs with like middle-aged regular pub going to, and it kind of really, people really dance to it, and it's
And
it's just not
Glastonbury.
as,
You were at Glastonbury this year, weren't you?
Oh,
oh
did you
yeah,
play Glastonbury too? Yeah.
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 Awesome.
It was a bit of a come down. Last time I played there was like 25 years ago on the main stage, and he did this. He did my sound,
Mark, yeah.
and we
Oh,
we
yeah.
were in paper for breaking the sonic limit.
You went
Oh.
over the decibel limit, did you?
Yeah. That was thanks
Only
to
by
my
1 dB.
Ah,
goodness.
Is there
My
film
big
of
brother.
Mark being let
One
off in
thing
handcuffs?
was to make it into the local.
I remember that I was your key tech and your sound guy, and something was happening with your keyboard, and I had to run from the sound desk through all these people, go on the
remember you
pyramid
telling this
stage,
story.
mend this thing, and then get back to the sound desk. And I'm sure it went over while I wasn't like, you know,
yeah. I wasn't there, my lord. Your Honour, it wasn't me. It was circumstance.
yeah, exactly.
And then
Wasn't
I
my
brought
fault.
the wrong floppy disk and loaded like the wrong music, and obviously there's no sound check. Anyway, that was back in the days when I was on the big stage, and this year was like slightly low key. But I mean, I like making groups of people dance, whatever their number. I mean, I think.
Well, so I mean, it sounds like from what you're saying, you're being very, very specific about the threes. You know, if you're not going to work in any other thing, I mean, what is it that's why are you being so specific about it? Do you think we need to kind of break out of the 4/4? What's the sort of in terms of, you know, your regular kind of club sets or whatever? What's the motivation for that?
I'm just kind of stubborn and a bit OCD or something, and I mean, there's a kind of proto techno track, Throbbing Gristle, Hot on the Heels of Love, and that's in 3/4, and I mean, I think that track must have been like hugely influential on thousands of DJ producer types that went on to just only make beats with 4/4. But
Right.
I mean, I don't know what, it's just become my world, you know. Just I get into this different state of mind when I'm making the music, and I like it, and whether I'm listening or dancing, it's like it's a sort of parallel universe of sound, music, or something.
I mean, do you think there are different creative paths that one takes? Because I mean, when we write, you know, and we're jamming and we're working in the usual, you know, we tend to have muscle memory and go to the places that generally make us comfortable, that aren't going to challenge us so much to get us started, perhaps. And do you think that, you know, the fact that if you give yourself a challenge like this, then you end up going into different areas than you would ordinarily, even with the same technology?
Well, I remixed Seal's Kiss from a Rose in the 90s, and that was in 3/4, actually. Seal loves waltz. I'm sort of the person that discovered that singer. I'm the Syd Barrett to Seal's Pink Floyd. and I mean, I don't know why, because I'm not a trained musician, and you know, I just been drawn into that for some reason, and
it's like a calling.
I've been making it for 5 years. This, what I started off calling Neo Waltz, then Future Waltz, then 3-step, and 2 years ago, I just decided, right, that's it. I'm going to draw a line now and not play any more DJ gigs. So I just basically took a sort of leap of faith that it kind of closed one door and another one opens attitude. I'm only going to do this because this is what I'm getting off on. And I mean, if I'm sure if you know, if I'm making music and I'm enjoying it much more myself, that translates to the listener or the dancer as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
I can understand that. So, I mean, the other thing that I was interested in is, you know, generally speaking, you know, in terms of, I know that a lot of DAWs and most, you know, a lot of sequencers also have, you know, they have 6/8, they have alternative time signatures, but not everything is geared towards working in that environment. Are there any kind of technical challenges to working exclusively in an alternative tempo? Do things always work as you would hope?
Yeah, they pretty much do. I mean, Logic goes in 3/4, and that's the only software I use. My old sequencers that I used in the late 80s, in that rave scene, which kind of launched my career, they go into 3/4.
That's the Ensoniq stuff, right? You're famously a kind of purely Ensoniq guy.
Yeah,
at the time.
well, I was then. Yeah, that's what it was at Glastonbury. That I had the wrong floppy disk. I'd been rehearsing for 2 days, and then I just loaded the wrong floppy disk because I used to just do sort of live mix downs, and I went on stage with. So I picked an MC who was a guy that I'd met a week before, went past the backstage on a motorbike, and I said, "Do you want to come and MC for me?" This was like the Pyramid stage at Glastonbury, and he was like, "Yeah, all right." And he was a really kind of gregarious, outgoing, and I'm just really pleased because I think people, you know, it was the music I hadn't expected to play. It was like that spontaneous. Oh, and he said, "I'll only do it if my mate can come on and play bongos as well." I was like, "All right then."
That's a hell of a rider.
And yeah, that was that Ensoniq and 909 just used to just sound ridiculous through like the raves, like the
Just got a
people
big size, yeah.
Yeah, the sound systems, they were, you know, setting up sound systems for like Motorhead or Pink Floyd or whatever during, you know, then these guys were like starting to do the sound for those big warehouse and,
right.
you know.
Because Turbo Sound kind of came out of that whole thing, didn't it, really?
Countryside raves in the M25, yeah. And it was just like I would just plug my gear directly into the DJ mixer, and it just sounded just ridiculously fat.
Right, excellent. Rich, in terms of, you know, when I mean, going back to the kind of notion of working in these alternatives, do you think that we? I know you're saying that it's not uncommon, but in terms of as a listening audience, it is harder to push that. Say, if for instance, you know, you were commissioned to do a remix of a track that was, you know, maybe could be stretched into 6s or 3s or whatever. I mean, one wouldn't tend to go in that direction because, you know, it's more difficult. It's a more difficult approach. Do you think we're kind of constricted by the conservatism of our own creative parameters as well, or do you think, you know, we should be pushing the boundaries a bit more? It's a bit of bravery. Both.
I observe that people are constrained by the fact that their devices default to 4/4, and perhaps that so many people have been brought up over so many years hearing almost nothing but 4/4 that to them is rhythm. But I also think the second part of your premise, which is that we should be stretching more into other things. And as regards whether it's more difficult on a dance floor, I'm not your resident dance floor expert here, but I think when done well and done smoothly, people don't even realize that they're dancing to 7 or whatever.
They were right. They don't know before.
Sorry, Mark.
They shouldn't. They shouldn't feel. It shouldn't feel like
I think when it's done,
stuttering motorized deal.
Yeah. Sorry, Mark.
When it's done well, you just don't know that it's in a different time signature. And one of my favorite bands is Led Zeppelin. There's loads of weird time signatures in there, which I just wouldn't notice I didn't sit and actually try and play those parts on the guitar. Then when you try and play it, you're like, oh, hang on a minute. What happened? It's turned round in a really weird place. And Warren Cucurulo is one of my favorite people for turning things around in weird places. I mean, working with Duran and trying to put things on the grid in Logic and having to change the time signature all the time was a challenge, because I only think in very simple mathematical terms, I suppose.
Right.
So he was always like turning things around like one beat at the end of a bridge or something. You're like, this has thrown out my whole making music in patterns and putting them together as patterns kind of idea. And I had to sort of nudge things along the timeline or work out a way of doing it before we were doing things on a sequencer with a timeline. I think I was using opcode vision, and that's all pattern based. So I'd have to write little tiny patterns in to
fill
to kind of resolve things.
Right.
But,
I see what you're saying.
so if it's done, and I went to Adam's evening in Hackney, and that was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. And a young woman called Orange Carrera, is that her name? Taught me how to dance, how to actually waltz properly. Brilliant.
That's excellent.
I loved it.
I've got to have a short commercial interlude. I don't know, Adam, if you're able to stick around, and I wanted to discuss a little bit further about collaborative aspects and working with people as well. Is that going to be okay with you?
Yeah, I'm here in my bedroom smoking.
All right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm just going to hit the add button, and then we'll be back in a sec.
Okay.
Of course, our sponsors are Isotope, and in fact, one of the big things that they've just announced is Ozone 6, massively influential in the mastering world.
Ozone has all the essential mastering.
I'll let Matt take it away from here.
Exciter, stereo imager, post equalizer, maximizer, and dithering. Try Ozone 6 for yourself. Download the free 10-day trial at isotope.com.
Right. Well, as we know, every week we also run a competition with Isotope, and we have a winner from last week. I'm just going to bring that up now. The winner is, in fact, a chap called Graham Heiner, who is at State of Head, his Twitter handle, at State of Head. And he posted, and we picked him out as a winner with the random number selector. He said, look forward to some tasty mastering. Thanks to Nick for the show and Isotope for the giveaways. So please do get in touch. Graham Heiner at State of Head. You have won a copy of Ozone 6, and the Isotope Fairy will bestow it upon you when you supply me with an email address so I can pass it on to her. And of course, we've also got another competition this week. I believe there's a big release coming from Isotope tomorrow, so there may be something else different tomorrow, but the competition this week is again for a copy of Isotope 6, Isotope 6. And what you have to do, you have to be on Twitter, you have to send out the hashtag. Well, basically, if you tweet this, the hashtag Smarter Mix Decisions to at Isotope Inc. and at Sonic Nick, then that will enter you the competition. But don't just do that. Why don't you attach a comment as well, because it always gives us a little bit extra, because we know that they read it and I read it, and it's always nice to see what you're thinking about the show. Drop any feedback in there, tell me how great I am, or or not at the case. All good stuff. So once again, what you have to do is tweet out the hashtag Smarter Mix Decisions at Sonic Nick at Isotope Inc. And do check out Isotope Ozone 6. Even if you haven't already got it, or you think you're going to win, it's well worth it. You get a 10-day free demo, and it really is kind of one of the most interesting and fully featured creative mastering plugins. There, I got it out in the end. Crikey, that was a bit of a struggle. There we go, Mark. Back again. Oh, I'll switch those back on again. So, one of the things I was interested in also perhaps exploring is, it's fine if you're going to inhabit a particular time signature world, but a lot of your tracks are based on collaborations with other artists.
Yeah.
And how are they responding to it? Do they find it kind of particularly challenging to work in that way, or does it kind of...
I work with a lot of rappers, and some of them just can't do it. And I just think how musical are people. Some people just get it straight away. Sometimes I write a song for someone to sing, and other times they come up with the song. And I mean, I did a couple of tracks with Lee Perry, I mentioned earlier before we started the show, and he got it straight away, and he was like going, "I'm the king of the waltz," and I'm like, he was just great and totally on the rhythm, and he's like this legendary producer.
Yeah, absolutely. Lee Scratch Perry. He's isn't he the sort of the king of dub almost, isn't he?
Yeah, he doesn't so much produce now. He has just done something where he was more involved in the production, I think,
right,
with someone in London. But I mean, he was just kind of chatting, freestyling lyrics on my music, and it's one of the best days I've ever had, actually, in his house in the Swiss Alps.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
I like that because it's really waltzy. I wore lederhosen up there to his house, and he wore a yellow afro wig, a purple beard, and a kind of red tracksuit. And the first thing he said to me was, "Your clothes is ugly." And I thought, well, that's rich coming from a man.
Actually, lives in the Alps, yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, and I mean, David McColeman, you know, the thing we're releasing in a couple of weeks, that's a cover version, but we also wrote stuff together. He got into it straight away. I mean, I seem to just be crossing paths with the right people at the right time who are just getting into it. And then, I mean, just pop music in the 80s, there was just, you know, the Stranglers, Golden Brown, and Kate Bush, Army Dreamers, and the, you know, people that are a little bit older and remember that stuff.
Actually, when you think about it, there are a couple of, because there was that Gabriel track, "Don't Give Up," was in 3, I think, as well, wasn't it? There was I think there are kind of moments, aren't there, where you just, something will stand out because it's so different, and if it's done in a kind of intelligent way and isn't you know, just purely odd, it just happens to, it has a beautiful lyric. Because I mean, 3s are there's a sort of inherent rhythm to them that has a sort of movement that is different to just the regular phrasing that you would get.
The Artful Dodger too, the producers that did really well in the late 90s with that speed garage two-step stuff. They did a track in 3/4 too, that's amazing. And I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's sort of like another level of music making.
I suppose so, yeah. It does. It's going to exercise muscles that you perhaps one isn't used to exercising, and stretch you in that way. So I'm curious also, what sort of you say you're working in Logic, what kind of is that your kind of writing setup, and what is your, when you go to work on stuff, I mean, what does your setup entail these days?
Well, I've kind of accumulated lots of nice vintage synths, which I use, but not only. Right now, I've got my setup in my bedroom, because I just kind of like working standing up in my bedroom at the moment. I kind of think, I just realised the other day that my most successful music that I made years ago, I was always standing up when I was making it, and it does make sense to be standing up when you're making music to dance.
Yeah, I suppose different kind of energy as well.
And I had, because I used to have like the N-Sonic and the 909 set up on keyboard stands. So it was just, I wouldn't think of sitting down because I'd be too low down.
Right.
And then I had some waltz lessons. So whether it's in 3/4 or 6/8, whatever, if it's like, if I can do the fundamental waltz steps to it, it's working for me. But yeah, you were asking me more about gear and stuff. I mean, I've got a real piano downstairs. Sometimes I wake up and work out with a melody idea and work it out on the piano. Sometimes I have a melody idea and I just walking down the street and I rush home and I just pick the first soft synth at random and play it in, you know,
just to get the idea down, right?
yeah. And then I cut beats up. You know, usually if you cut the fourth beat off and plonk it on the third beat,
Right.
it like on a break beat or something, for example, it usually just works. I don't know. It just all seems to kind of work.
Oh, interesting. And there's quite a lot of. I mean, you were talking about working with Lee Scratch Perry. There's quite a lot of similarities in the kind of the spinning, the triplet feel, and the double tempo, the half tempo, the sort of the dub side, and also the dub step kind of feel. Well, you've got a half speed and a double speed kind of thing. I guess you use that quite a lot as well, right?
Yeah, but nothing like. I don't really think hard about what I'm going to do. Everything I do is just messing around and experimenting. I'm not really thinking, right now I've got to put this half. It's all really done by intuition and just
feel, right?
Yeah, and exploring. So I don't have a formula.
You've got that. Adam's got this kind of amazing voodoo that happens around him and electronics. I remember going around his house and he was doing a remix of something, and he'd got the record that he was remixing on an SL1200, and he said, "What do you think of this?" And he switched on the SQ80 and the 909, put the record on, and the whole thing played in sync for about 5 minutes. And I was like going, how are you keeping those two things in time? And they just kind of stayed in time. It's like this kind of, there's a magic that happens somehow. I would have been there for years trying to get the SMPTE code to connect to the whatever. And he's I don't know, it's kind of a luck that you have, Adam.
A built-in Bluetooth MIDI sync.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I had a Roland System 100 that I'd swapped all my old 90s gear for, like Akai's and all these Atari and everything. I swapped all my gear when I was living in Italy, and I was leaving, and I went to sell all my gear in a music shop, and I saw this System 100 and the Roland, I think it's from 1975 or 6, and
beautiful thing, yeah.
And I thought, I want that. And I just swapped all my gear for that. and my girlfriend at the time it was a bit like Jack and the Beanstalk. Like he went and swapped the family cow for some beans. She was like dusty old grey thing, you know. But for about 2 years I didn't have a CV to MIDI converter thing.
Right.
So I was kind of using the sequencer from the System 100 and kind of dropping it in, trying to get it in time, like a DJ with decks, and I suppose it making things 10 times more difficult for myself, because then, you know, it would be constantly going out of time, but when I got it in, it would just
stay. Right, that's interesting.
A world of it just wouldn't be so clinical as kind of sitting there methodically programming all the notes in, you know.
Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I just want to introduce another topic here, because we've got and this may well be applied to the way that you work as well. I'd be interested to see how you feel about this sort of thing. So if I'll just spin this in quickly, and then we can. Let's have a look. This was something I shot at the recent Music Expo.
Hello,
this is Henrik from Softube
Production Expo in London, and I would like to present to you our Console 1 system. There it is. It's part hardware and part software. It's an integrated hardware and software mixer. You use it together with your DAW. So if I'm shut the software window, you will see that I'm using Pro Tools, but it works just as well with any major DAW, Logic, Ableton Live, Cubase, Nuendo, Presonus Studio One, on Mac, on PC as well. The way you use it is that you insert the plugin called Console 1 on all tracks of your DAW, and that routes the sound over to the Console 1 system. So what you see down here is the meter bridge for the Console 1. You see 20 tracks at the time. If you have larger sessions, there is a button on the hardware called Page Up. You can simply push that a couple of times and you can see.
So I'm just going to summarize that briefly. I don't know if you've been aware of this, but basically it's like a kind of channel strip, dedicated channel strip hardware so that you can work on the EQ, the dynamics, and that side of things on a per channel basis in dedicated hardware. It's fixed to that. I know, Rich, have you seen or used any of the Softube stuff? Because this looks like a really interesting way, because I'm thinking that, you know, modular controllers is the way to go rather than one big one to do everything.
I have worked with some Softube software and was very impressed by the quality of their work, by the sound, by the way it felt to use it. And this exists in a class of products that now I find very interesting, that is sort of taking a famous console paradigm and overlaying it on top of anybody's DAW. And the first one I remember hearing about was a Harrison product a few years back that was specific to certain softwares. But now, of course, we've got Steven Slate's products, and we've got now this product, and UA has a mixer that overlays on top of your DAW that you can use if you want, and Motu actually even has one. And it's an interesting class of products because it presumes that you're somehow dissatisfied with the mixing environment you've been provided, and that this will actually benefit your world in some profound way. And then add to that, in this case, the dedicated hardware controller, not unlike that Imposker 2 thing that's sitting behind me right now, where you've got a very specifically set of knobs and buttons describing the software that it's going to be used to control in every instance without change. And it's a very interesting product to me. I'd like to hear them show me why my life is going to be a lot better listening through that thing. I'm serious. Right. It's sort of a gauntlet I'm throwing down. I really would like them to show me how much better it's going to be.
I think that the notion, I mean, apart from the actual, you know, you get two, currently they're doing SSL channels. There's it comes with a 4000E, and they've just produced XL 9000, which I'm not familiar with, but it's supposed to be kind of a very different way of working. But the notion that it could be, you know, perhaps a classic British console channel strip, or, you know, an American AMAC or whatever, is also the notion. But the idea that you've got...
was that the A he was talking about? I was trying to figure out what American A was. AMAC, is that
Yeah,
it?
I think so. Which, again...
Which is also an Eve sort of directed design, because he did mention at the end of the video that they want to emulate probably Neve, and, you know, I guess it's AMAC now. So they're going to do other consoles.
Yeah, I mean,
apparently.
I think the idea primarily is the notion that there would be that you've got a dedicated control for that specific function, which is, again, you know, we've always been looking at, you know, controllers are generally very generic, and as a result just don't generally fit your workflow. So you're always going, yeah, I love the idea of this, but then when it comes down to it, it's like, oh, I can just use the mouse, you know. And that, so in many ways, this is quite a bold move, because it's not a cheap product. I think it's about
well, distills a lot of things that have happened in the past. For example, Sony Oxford was the first one I'm aware of that centralized the controls for all of the dynamics and EQs in such a way that you basically would select a channel, and that those things would now light up that channel, and you'd be able to alter them for that channel. So you were always using the same set. Of course, that was a $200,000 console with a lot of faders on it, and this is something that sits next to your keyboard on your desk. But it's same sort of principle, and it also takes like sort of that fader port paradigm that people have used, where you've got like one knob, a couple of buttons, and a fader, and you use that to control your DAW. It combines a lot of existing conceptual ideas into one new sort of, like I say, if they can show how this console makes your life sound better, then they might have something here.
Or work better, I suppose. I know, Adam, do you do a lot of mixing yourself? I mean, is this the sort of thing that is part of your world, or does the mix kind of tend to go out to, you know, you get someone else to look at the final mix? So how does it work?
I get a guy to come round my house who like analyzes frequencies and things. That I mix everything myself, but I get someone just to come and make sure I haven't got those like clashing frequencies that cancel each other out, sort of technical things I don't really understand. So the mix sounds pretty much as it was as I've done it, but he's just made a bit more space for when it's mastered or whatever.
So do controllers like this like have a place in your setup, or are you very much kind of through the window of the laptop or the computer?
I'm just pretty much, I'm quite happy on the laptop because then I can just carry on. I live outside of London and I'm often going in and out of town. I can just be working on a mix and carry on mixing on the train. I use one of those VRM, studio.
Oh, is that the Focusrite thing?
Yeah, I
The
use
headphone
that
amp, right.
with headphones. So, I can't be really lugging loads of gear on the train,
Okay.
So I just, I like to check a mix on these like 13 quid from Camden Market speakers I've got in my bedroom and kitchen, and then I've got some nice Genelex big speakers downstairs. But I just kind of think, and I really like listening back to things on my phone because that's how most people are going to hear them, or on a nice sound system, very, very loud in the club.
Yeah.
My friend's got a club round the corner, and some of the things I've done recently, I would go round with a really, really good sound system, and I go and just set up my gear in the middle of the club when it's not open. I mean, it's more a live venue.
Oh, that's a great way to check those. You understand what's going on then, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because you could, and then come back and check it at home again through the little cheap speakers, and then send myself an MP3 and listen to it on the phone, and just.
But not so much in the kind of the world of controllers. That's interesting. Mark, what do you think about the idea of because essentially what Rich was saying, it is almost like they're emulating what most digital consoles are doing, which is the fat channel effectively, or the live channel strip.
I think the problem with controllers for me is that I see them and I think, God, that's a brilliant idea. So I bought one for Duran Duran, one of those great big, what are they called? DigiDesign desk things.
Icon or something.
And then I never touched the damn thing. The only thing I used it for was the Focusrite mic preamps, which are kind of okay. And then I buy those little things, and then they always end up in boxes around my house, and I end up doing it with a mouse on the laptop screen. And I think the only thing I use that has got controls on it is the pod. And because the controls are dedicated to doing things on the panel, and I can play the guitar and just reach over and grab it and change the thing, or I flick through the amp models on the original pod. That to me makes sense. So the reason I use it is because the controls are attached to the thing that's doing the thing. Right. And I think as soon as you separate the thing that's doing the controlling from the computer, so if this is a plugin and it's a controller that goes with a plugin, it's just something I'm never going to set up. It would be in a box underneath my sofa, and I'd probably be using the nice sounding plugin with the mouse. No,
I think that's fair enough. The thing that struck me about it was, that combined with a large fader bank. If you were into the console way of working but didn't want a full console, you could use it in a number of different ways. But I can understand
if it forced you to route the audio through the actual physical unit, so that maybe I had 8 outputs. Or maybe I plugged the USB into the side of my computer or the FireWire, and the audio goes off down the USB and into the box and does some clever DSP in the box and then spits it back into the computer. So if it's actually tied to if the functionality of it is tied to its processing hardware, then it makes sense, because you'd want to plug it in. You'd go, oh, hang on a minute, I want that sound. I'm going to plug that thing in to get that sound.
Right, okay.
But if it's just controlling a plug-in, I think, me personally, it would be under the sofa or leaning against the wall at the back of the studio, or just,
as Rich often puts it, the doorstop.
It takes too long to plug it in.
Could be a doorstop to the future Hall of Fame candidate. It's true. But
exactly. Yeah.
If it could be demonstrated to make your stuff sound better, that would be a reason to put up with it.
Right. Okay. So it's a
but if I can unplug it from my computer and my computer's still running the software that makes the thing sound better.
Well, maybe what they need to do is direct the marketing that just says, yes, the audio goes through it, and just leave it at that. And then you'll have to use it because you think that the audio goes through it, even if it doesn't.
Or maybe they turn it into a dongle-based thing, and the plug-in absolutely won't work without it. But
I don't think that's.
Oh, that'll
okay.
be popular.
Yeah, that would be popular.
Yeah, I know.
So, Adam, have you never kind of thought, actually, yeah, I'll try that? I mean, have you been down the controller route and just thought and tried it and just gone, yeah, it's not for me, or just has it never really featured in your kind of idea of how you want your studio to set up?
Hasn't really crossed my mind to be. I don't really get that excited about it. What's that?
It's all right, I got it.
I've got what I need to realise what I want to do. So
Right.
I don't really. If it's not broke, I don't think I have to fix.
There's a lesson there for us all, I think, because I mean, we all think, I mean, particularly in the creative industry, sometimes it's the magic bullet approach. It's like, get this and your life will be better and you'll get the girls and you'll have the hit records, when in fact, it's really just down to what's in your head a lot of the time.
Yeah.
In the 90s, because my success came very quickly. I knew how to use the N-Sonic and I knew how to use the 909 drum machine because he told me, Mark.
Hey, me.
But my big
No, I told
brother
him.
showed me. I bought his 909 basically, and he showed me how to program it. And then another guy, Jimmy Polo, showed me how to program the N-Sonic, and I learnt those bits of kit really well. And then because I got a record deal so quick, I was going in these expensive studios, which was a complete waste of time and money. I now see retrospectively, and then employing people to program for me, and I found it all intimidating. And because I was like busy doing PR and partying and stuff, I didn't really keep up with the the way everything was moving forward. Right. And my friend Layla, who's a producer that works with Bjork and people like that, she used to call me a white gloves pussy producer because I didn't do anything. I just sat on this sofa at the back of the studio saying, can you sample that for me? And can you do this? Unless it was like, programming in a line on the N-Sonic, I didn't know how to do anything because I was kind of spoiled by always being able to afford to have people do that for me. But then when it got to the point when I couldn't, my friend Layla kind of bullied me into getting a laptop and becoming hands-on again.
And did you find that kind of gave you, was that liberating, or was it a pain in the ass?
Really, really liberating. I mean, I was like, oh my God, because I had bought like loads of bits of gear throughout the 90s and thought, right, I'm going to sit down with the manuals and learn this. And I'd then find it all overwhelming and it would just sit there getting covered in dust, and I'd sell it for a third of the price. So I thought, oh no, I'm going to get a laptop and I'm going to get all this stuff and I'll never get my head around it. But my friend Layla and her.
She saw it, yeah. So what I'm curious. So was it Logic just by default, or was there something that drew you to that? Was it?
It were just all the people that I knew that made music who I could ask, how do you do this and how do you do that? They all used Logic, so it just was logical.
Yeah, very good.
Also, Ed Hanley from the group Plaid, he helped me a lot and just gave me his like sound library that he'd spent 12 years collecting. He just gave me that and like all this software and showed me how to do all these things. And there was like really great support from great friends, really. Yeah. And then as we were talking about before, the freedom of being able to work on mixes on a train or anywhere, my thing that I'm doing now that began in Venezuela and an island in Venezuela.
Sure. You were able to do that just by being, because it freed you up.
Just by carrying a little bag with me,
that is very.
Years ago, I was just wasting thousands of pounds that the record, you owe the record company, I'd like turn up. I'd book a studio from 11 in the morning and turn up at 5 in the evening, and
Yeah, I remember that.
And the engineers were going, you realise you're having to pay for all this. I just couldn't get my head around it. And that thing about, you know, consoles and things, I mean, whenever girls used to come into the studio, they always used to say, do you know what all those buttons do?
That's the line, isn't it? Yep.
Yeah. And
Did you say yes?
no, I didn't lie. I just go, no, he does. And then just sit at the back of the room and take drugs or something.
Or something. There's one other thing that I wanted to cover quickly, because this is just a really interesting piece of this is something called DinIsNoise, and this is one of the videos that the chap Jag Sampath has put together.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your Captain Jag Sampath back on the flight deck. DinIsNoise 12.0 work in progress from Chennai, India. So in 12.0, you're going to be able to morph between waveforms. So transform one waveform into the other, and the timbre of the sound will change as you morph. Yeah. So in preparation for that,
this is just so hypnotic. I'm going to fast forward it a little bit because he's adding extra harmonics and just see what happens to the way the interface changes. It is absolutely... Let's see if I just fast forward it a bit. There we go.
What is going to demonstrate the morphing, yeah? So this is a circle now. There's too much background noise. I mean, there's like tuk-tuks, buses, cars...
He's in Chennai in India.
Motorbikes, ceiling fans, washing machines, you name it. This is India, okay? Anyhow, the work goes on, okay? So basically you have, so I've turned the make shape form on, and you have the circle. Now if I add harmonics, the shape will change, and that will change the timbre of the sound. So, and that's what I wanted to show you. So it's kind of, you're morphing the circle into other shapes, into other circular shapes, because the harmonics always produce a very circular shape, okay?
I'm going to fast forward it because he's quite... here we go. I don't know about you. I mean, there's a lot of this video, and this is basically a package called DinIsNoise. It's a kind of sound creation and alternative. It's kind of like a synthesizer, but it's very unique GUI, and just that interface there. I was just sitting here watching it for about an hour yesterday because it was just so hypnotic. I don't know how it's going to work in terms of in terms of actual music production and that side of thing, but it's tied together with all sorts of kind of gravitational drone-like creation, and the fact that you can change and morph these waveforms in such a visual way. I just found that absolutely hypnotic. I don't know what you think about this, Rich. I mean, I know practicality is something that one has to bear in mind in many of these situations, but wasn't that... what did you think? Did you get a chance to look at some of this stuff?
Not only did I look at it, I downloaded it and played with it.
Ah, did you get... Because I just couldn't get my head around it. I didn't have time to actually kind of...
I got my head around probably 5% of it. Certainly not much of what he was showing in those videos, which is very interesting to me. It's an extremely academic sort of an environment and not terribly GUI driven in the extreme. So... it's conceptually very interesting, and I enjoyed messing about with it, and I think I would enjoy messing about with it in the same way that I used to enjoy messing about, say, with Metasynth. And not that I'm comparing the two because they do very different things, but just in terms of the way I would interact with it and how it might end up in my workflow. In the case of Metasynth, the only thing that ever happened was I'd create these really, really interesting sounds and then make samples of them and then wait for an opportunity to use them, which as often as not never arrived. But in this thing...
Sounds familiar.
Well, it's true. And I see my interaction with this thing going along those same lines. It's not something you necessarily want to open up in the middle of a session with a bunch of artists hanging around the control room waiting for you to produce something useful.
Yes,
yeah. But I'd like to be shown I'm wrong about that. But I just didn't see any place where, there was some massive list of very interesting presets that would apply to a whole bunch of potential situations, which is what most guys provide with their extremely deep instrument these days.
Yes, I would totally agree with that. And Mark, I get the impression that maybe the Tinley mindset of numbers and geometric shapes and stuff, this might appeal to you more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I love working out all those weird number things and trying to figure out like what the relationships between things are. Like I just created I've got that little Korg, talking about things that control things. I've got one of those little Korg nano pads with 16 pads on it. And I've just created a sound bank with the Fibonacci sequence on it, which is, but I worked out all the frequencies that the Fibonacci sequence creates as you go from 1 + 2 = 2 +, and how that works. So that it creates these, is it 1.618033399, and then you work out the difference between the next frequency. So I've got sort of 16 frequencies, and I've done that. And I'll sit there I could sit for days fiddling around with these things. But then at the end of it, you do have to ask yourself, is this musical and would anyone listen to it? And the answer to that is nearly always no. So it's very much a sort of a self-gratification kind of like thing. Although having said that, the graphics on this are really good, and I could imagine maybe I could, when I move house to our new house, I'm going to have a sort of a little sound experiments room. And I was thinking about having maybe a Reiki couch in there and getting people round and they'd lie on this couch. So I could have the thing, you know, making those shapes above them on a screen, and they could look up at that, and then they could hear the sound it was making and stuff.
So
and then
sort of mood generator.
Yeah, and then I could do a therapy, and then I could say, and you are now relax. All that kind of stuff.
Well be.
So for ambient kind of for ambient kind of things, and those kind of things where you get the self-hypnosis tapes or something with some kind of, it's, you don't want the music to do anything too jarring to the person while they're under, you know, out or whatever. It might work really well for that, to create some of those ambient kind of moodscape things. But
yeah, it is.
I don't know, in anything else.
As Rich said, it's very scientific. It does have MIDI input. This is something that the guy Jag Sampa is really interesting bloke. He's a mathematical. Yeah, he tours talking about physics and maths and music and the way that all these things relate. I mean, it's his first and probably last audio project. Originally, he's from the field of computer graphics, animation, film, games, and he's interested in using Bezier curves and all aspects of computer audio synthesis, as he felt it hasn't been fully explored. It feels like it's a kind of it's a stop on the way to somewhere else, and I think part of some of the things that he's visualized are really truly amazing, and that's something that's quite interesting. I mean, do you, Adam? You're working very much in software. I mean, how do you feel about those sort of generative type packages which will help let you explore textures and that sort of things? Do you prefer to kind of hit a note and have something happen, or are you happy to?
Yeah, I just like to get straight to the point, really. I mean, looked very nice, and I just don't find I have enough hours in the day to. I like beats and melodies and instant gratification. I guess I'm old-fashioned like that, and
I could totally understand that. I mean, this is one of those things that would be a bit of a time sink.
I mean, I suppose I used to sit and play on the piano every day for hours and hours, and things would come out of that. So I suppose the same thing could apply to like that, but I don't do that either anymore. Sit and play the piano for hours and hours. I like to I have a lot of ideas happening a lot all the time, and I just like to just get in there and make things.
Oh, I can understand that. For those who are interested, though, if you go to DinIsNoise.org, you can download. There's a free version, which I'm guessing is what Rich downloaded. The interesting thing is also it's available as Mac, Windows, and Linux as well, and also. It's like $20 for if you want to buy the thing and you get the download. I've got the download, and I hope to enjoy it a little bit and explore it. But I like the idea of having that thing just running, you know, because it's just it's almost like the kind of fish tank screensaver or the open fire, you know, that some people put on a screen in the back of a studio just to give it that sort of atmosphere. And this thing, it's very beautiful. I mean, beautiful mathematics is not a bad concept, I guess, but perhaps as an instrument at the moment, it probably would require a bit of it's more challenging. And I think he does say, you know, workflow is Din's weak point, and that is. But he's just released a version 13, so I mean, he's done a lot of work. This has been in development over 8 years. I don't know if it's a full-time thing or whether it's just something that he's kind of dipped in and out of, because I guess he's obviously able to do other stuff as well. But very beautiful, and I wanted to thank, because it was Eric Lurie Kulo who sent me that link and said, "Oh, check it out," because we were talking about unusual synthesizers and maybe alternative ways of doing it. Anyway, I think this is probably a good time to sign off, because we've been chatting for ages and it's been great fun, and I want to say thank you very much. And I've run out of things to say, but we do try and keep the show to around about an hour, and we're at hour 15 already, so thank you very much, everybody. I want to say thanks to everybody in the chat room for joining us, been there, and plenty of people there having a chat away, so please do check out if you've missed the live stream. I guess there's no point in me saying this, because you won't be watching this either, but if you didn't see the live stream, you're just watching this, we do stream live every Wednesday 4 p.m. UK time, sonicstate.com/live. That's the time and the place for Sonic Talk. So Rich, I'll come to you. I'll say thank you very much for joining us, and I shall expect to hear your DinIsNoise masterpiece perhaps by next week, if that's all right.
It might take a few years, but I'm working on it.
Okay, excellent. But thank you very much for joining us, Rich. I'm guessing off to the studio now to whack some more hotties, as I'm fond of saying.
Gosh, I hope so.
Anyway, thank you very much, Rich. And also I will say thank you very much to Mark Tinley, who's there in Glastonbury. And I do check out the DinIsNoise thing. I think you might find it kind of fun as well.
I am. I tried to download it and it just wouldn't run because Windows Explorer is not very good. And it jammed my whole machine up, but it's not anything to do with that program. I need to find an alternative to Windows Explorer, I think, for this particular machine, because it
just doesn't agree with you.
Yeah, doesn't agree with me, no.
Well, Mark, thanks very much for setting this up.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And also for bringing Adam into the fold. And I've always wanted to have a chat with you, Adam. So thank you very much for joining us too. Wish you the best of luck with the project. Not the project, the 3/4 direction that your life has now taken. And so give us an idea. What's the names, the dates, the titles? What's coming up that people should look at? Where should people look for your stuff?
Okay, well, the EP that is called This Is 3-Step, and it's under my name, Adamski, on FutureWaltz, and it's only going to be available online. And then, and I've just got an email saying it's been put back to the 15th of December. Yeah, I just said the 1st earlier on, but
so people will be able to get it as a digital download.
Yeah, and then in February there'll be like vinyl and CDs and stuff available, and a lot more stuff. It's all mastered and ready to go and in manufacture. But
right. Are you going to tour it? Are you going to be doing more gigs?
If anyone will book me,
I'm sure they will.
I just can kind of take things. I have just got an agent who's really enthusing about what I'm doing, and apparently he's really good. So I'm looking forward to. I've got a few bits and bobs coming up, and going to do something in Berlin in a couple of weeks, and in London, and
excellent. So will people be able to find that information on the adamskiofficial.com? Will all that stuff be up there?
If someone puts it up there for me, because I never remember to do anything like that.
That's a job for your agent. Get him on the case. Or her.
Yeah.
Anyway, Adam, thank you very much for joining us. That is Sonic Talk. Obviously, don't forget, if you're wanted to enter the competition, we also have the giveaway from Isotope. Remember, I'll just a reminder there. If you want to win Isotope Ozone 6, tweet Smarter Mix Decisions to @SonicNick, @Isotopes Inc., and you will be entered in the chance to win Isotopes Ozone 6. And watch out tomorrow, because I think is tomorrow Thursday? Yeah, tomorrow. There's going to be some more exciting news from Isotope. We got something ready to go that we filmed yesterday. So anyway, that's it for Sonic Talk number 383. And see you later. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. Cheers.